Hello, welcome to On the Payroll, my podcast about leadership, project delivery, project management, consulting, and best practices around delivering CRM such as Salesforce and Microsoft to help businesses leverage the platform to create value for their organizations. Today I speak to Luke Menzfeld, who has led the Salesforce enablement within his own company before moving on to a consulting role with one of the Salesforce partners. Without further ado, let me introduce you to Luke Menzfeld. I hope you enjoy listening in on our conversation. Thanks a lot and have a great day. Hello and welcome, Luke, to my On the Payroll podcast. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. Yourself?
I'm very good, thank you. Now, I understand that when you were at university, you did a stint in America where that was kind of like the first time you started on your career journey. You were working with Triumph.
Yeah.
Was that when you got to know about Salesforce?
Yeah, that was the first time. So that was back in 2007. Like you say, during university, I spent a year working for Triumph in Atlanta, Georgia. Triumph motorcycles, they're built in my hometown. So where I grew up, Triumph motorcycles are there. And I'd actually worked for Triumph as part of a summer job prior to getting the experience to go abroad with them. And that was the first time then I encountered Salesforce. And at that time, they were using it as a CRM system to manage information related to their dealerships. So Triumph sell motorcycles through a network of dealerships. I think at the time back then, there was about 200 in the States, and they were using Salesforce as a CRM system to capture details about the different dealerships that they have.
Very cool, very cool. I did a project for a dealership as well, so
Okay.
It kind of sounds like something that I've done before. Since
Nice.
then, you've had a variety of roles. You were a project leader in a children's charity, a research assistant, and the last few recent ones was with IT companies. It was with an ERP product, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep. Yeah, there was most recent experience before my sort of latest change was in oil and gas. So I've always seemed to find myself working with information systems and project management. I think in every organization that I've been with, I've had sort of an information focus. So not just pure IT technical, not just data, the other side, like a rounded view of information systems and IT. So I think I've always found myself in that role. And I think in every organization I've ever worked in, there's always been a required improvement in systems and management of information and flow of processes. So it just seems to, it's a good area, it's a good fit. I think it's one that interests me when it works really well.
That's the key thing, isn't it, when it works
exactly.
really well?
Yeah.
When did you pick up with Salesforce again as a product? At which point in your career? Right at the beginning? And then when did it?
Yeah, so right at the beginning, 2007 was my first introduction to the platform. And then when I next picked up on it was 2016. So I was working in the oil and gas industry at that time for a large sort of multinational organization. And we were transitioning our existing CRM system that was moving over to Salesforce. And at that particular time, I was an end user. I was a consumer of the system, if you like. I was an analyst at the time, so I was using the system to capture information and report on that for my role. And then we found out, right, we're moving over to Salesforce for your business unit. Here's the timescales, here's the impact, and it really went from there. So that really opened up a lot of doors for me. First in supporting the transition, optimizing the setup, getting some different things that we needed. And then it kind of spiraled. I had a variety of roles after that point, working directly hands-on with Salesforce.
Okay, let me just touch on the point you made about transitioning from one CRM to Salesforce. What was that like? Did the new system was there an excitement about the new system coming in?
Yes. Yeah, there was an excitement. It was a corporate-driven project. So at the particular time, I worked for a business unit, which was part of a larger corporate organization. So the decision was taken at corporate that we would move. We were excited, I think, because it was new. It was an investment, if you like. They were investing in improving the systems to take us beyond what we could do. So sitting on the positive side of the fence, I thought, well, that's good. We've got this system. That's a good thing. Yeah, I think there was excitement about that.
One of the things that you and I share, which is a passion for business change, when we spoke before. Do you feel that your organization at that point handled the change management piece? Did they handle it well? Or in terms of getting the user adoption in and getting the excitement and making sure that benefits came out of the implementation?
Yeah, it's interesting reflecting on it, looking back. It was a huge undertaking because there's many business units that were adopting the system across many territories and many products. So if anything, their task was huge. To put myself in their shoes now, looking back, I'm like, that's a monumental scope of work, not only to achieve the build, but then the adoption side of it. We had pretty comprehensive, couple of 100-page user manuals. There was the video content and some training material. But I think from a corporate driven project, it's quite hard to push that adoption. I think within the different business units, there needs to be a champion or an owner or somebody that's going to work to engage with their users, to try and sell the benefits, to make sure it's used, to show people how it could make their lives easier, to really keep on with that momentum, because it's easy to build and deliver.
That's true.
But it's the change management and the adoption is much less tangible, but is key. Is key.
That's true. So you say it's easy to build and deliver, but that's what you're doing now, right? You are now working in a partner.
Yes, yeah. It's so I'm on the other side of the fence now. Last 6 months, I've been working as a functional consultant or a Salesforce consultant for a partner at Cloud Galacticos, and that's very different. It's a very different engagement, because you're working on a fixed scope of work in some instances, an open scope of work, some exploration, some development. You've got all these different client contexts, all these different orgs, all these different needs, requirements, expectations. So yeah, I'm on the other side of that, which it's been an adjustment.
Okay, let's just put a pin on that, and I'm just going to take you back again with your role where you picked up Salesforce again.
Yes.
You transitioned to the new system and software, and you said you held a variety of roles.
Yes.
Working quite in depth with the product. Can you just talk a little bit more about those roles, please?
Yeah, absolutely. The framework, like the governance framework, if you like. So where I worked prior, I was working as an analyst, and Salesforce was our primary tool. That was our main tool to do our jobs for what our business units needed. And within the business, we had I think there was maybe 12 to 15 analysts across the world in different regional functions. And we reported into, for our business unit, the head of that area. So we worked in the subsea business. So there was all of us as analysts. And then from a system point of view, there was kind of a subject matter expert that looked after subsea. And what they did is they captured bugs or change requests or business needs, and they were the voice of that department. So I'd originally worked as an analyst. I'd done a lot of engagement when we implemented Salesforce to say, this is great. Could we have a new record page here? Could we have this related list? Could we have some sharing rules? Could we, we worked really well as a team to optimize and make small changes. And then there was a period of time which I became the subject matter expert. So I'd gone from being an analyst to the subject matter expert. I held that position for a while. It's a different role because you've got to talk to a lot more people across the organization. You have to prioritize in order, we had a certain allocation of developer support, but there was other areas of the business too. So that was a different
When you
role.
said when you say subject matter expert, do you mean around Salesforce or around a product that business?
Both. In that capacity, it was both, really. Kind of probably from a subject matter expert there, you had the main understanding of that business department's needs, both functionally from a system perspective and from an information perspective and a data perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So anything related to our area, and the system development and the it's kind of both.
Right. So talk to me about your journey from there to.
Yeah. So from the subject matter expert there was so from looking after just one business unit, a subsea, I then took a role which was a fantastic opportunity as someone transitioned away from the company. I took the role to look after the whole platform. So I'd gone from being subject matter expert for one business unit to subject matter expert for 6 business units and all of the 900 users. So that took some adjustment, because your remit or your brief is different. I think at that level, you're the single focal point of the system for the whole company.
Mm-hmm.
You have to engage a lot more with the senior management team from them respective business units to show them how the system delivers value for them, or how it could grow or change and adapt.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're really getting into the information management, the information that's produced from the system. So it scaled.
How long were you in that role?
I was in that role for just shy of 18 months.
Okay. What were some of the biggest initiatives that you might have undertaken within that role to either leverage the benefit of the Salesforce platform or any other change initiative that's organization-wide?
Yeah, the biggest project, the main focus of the role, I think, in the first sort of 12 months of that was just trying to understand our future roadmap of the platform. Because what we had is you've got Salesforce is a product across all these business units, and you had all these business units pulling in their own direction in terms of their developments, their needs, what they were looking to add on to the system, or what functionality they were looking to bring in. And it was evident that they're all fighting for resource. We had an external developer to support us, but was limited in the support that we had. So what I was trying to do was to develop cohesion in developing what the roadmap was for the platform. So stepping up from the business units, what does the organization want the system to achieve? What would Salesforce look like not in the next 3 months, 6 months, 9 months? What's it going to look like in 2 years, in 3 years? And how are we going to get there? Will we always rely on the external developer, or do we have our resource internally? Would we share the budget between departments, or is it going to be on a business by business unit basis? And that was a challenge. I think it was difficult. It's quite tough conversations. It's quite idealistic. It would be nice to think that all organizations have those conversations. I don't think they do in reality. So I'd worked on that sort of focus for quite a long time. And I think trying to get the different business units to work with the same framework of governance. Let's operate in the same way across the business units, from raising change requests or bugs or ideas, bringing them up, talking them out, prioritizing them, engaging early to talk about resource. Let's try to do that in a more organized and professional and efficient way, because the management of expectations is key in terms of the operational day-to-day running. It's critical. And I think if the management, or if the business unit doesn't see value from the system, or they don't understand how it supports them, you're going to get into some trouble, with your IT budget that's coming next year and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I hear that. How did you pivot from end user to consulting, and what was that process like for you?
Yeah, I'd started to invest a lot more time into Salesforce. So I'd had these positive experiences where I knew what we needed from a business perspective. I had quite a good understanding of the the basics, the declarative side of Salesforce. So I understood the objects and the record pages and the sharing rules and the basics that we could do. And we'd had quite good success in small iterative evolvements of our business unit. So we suddenly made the system very useful to fit what we needed to do. And I thought, okay, that's very cool. You know, I enjoyed doing that. And then also we delivered a big project. Our company restructured and split into 2 different orgs. So the last project that I led prior to moving on was to work on that project. So it's a 6-month project to split the orgs into 2. And it was just a very positive experience. So we were organized, we were talking regular, we developed quite a successful team. And I just thought, you know, I need to be involved in this more. I want to be leading that project from the other side. You know, I think I enjoyed capturing what we needed from the business, but then I wanted to do it as well. I wanted to get stuck in, build it and deliver it. You know, so I kept going back all the time. I was thinking, I'd like to be a bit more involved. You know, I picked up on my certifications. I started to launched a user group in my local area, which started having all these conversations where I was like, there's all this cool stuff happening with Salesforce that's in all my areas of interest. I think I need to change up and I would like my direction to go that way.
Okay. So you've been working in a partner for 6 months?
6 months, yeah.
How has your expectations been met, or tell me about that?
It's been good. It's been a great 6 months, and to be honest, my feet haven't really touched the ground since. It hasn't stopped. It's been very fast paced. Every day's a learning day, but 100%. You know, you've had to learn because every context is so different. So you're coming up against things every day where you either haven't seen them before, you're not quite sure how you're going to achieve them. You have to evaluate one of 3 different methods and understand the impact of that with the business, depending on their attitude and what they're looking for from it. So lots of learning, lots of change. I think on the one side, it's refreshing in a way that you don't have to deal with some of the internal challenges or politics, if you like. You've got a clear contact with the client. You've got a remit of work that can evolve and change and tweak and develop, but you don't have to deal with all of the meetings and the internal conversations, which is lovely. It's fantastic. You know, it's on that side, it's very nice. On the other side, where we've done developments, you know, we've worked on something, we've created it, we've refined it, we've launched it. Well, then afterwards, I'm desperate to see, well, how is it going? You know, like, yes. What's it allowed you to do? Are people happy about it? Are people more interested in the system? What reports have been generated? You know, there's all the part of the role I used to enjoy was delivering things and then seeing the benefit of them. Now, you get check-ins and you get, you know, future scopes of work, but I miss that.
Yeah,
I miss that.
I hear what you're saying, because it's always very nice when you go in and you do a good job and you want to see the benefits come out of it.
Yes.
But that's the hard bit. Like I always say, if you're working end user,
yeah.
And as you correctly pointed out, just because you have delivered doesn't mean the job is finished. Now it's getting the users using the system, getting the user adoption up, and making sure that the benefits are accrued from all that hard work. And we don't get to see it when you're in consulting.
Yes. No, definitely. And it's but it's been good. You know, I enjoy it so far. Time management is different because if you're working multiple projects, you know, you have to be very focused on time management and where you're committing your time. I think sometimes what I find is that you're ready to work and the client isn't. The client's ready to work and you're not. You know, you hit a stumbling block that sort of affects you. So timing doesn't always work out in the way it sort of did for an end user. Perhaps if you're an end user, if that was the case, you can still focus your efforts elsewhere. You know, so it's a kind of changes frequently, but it's been positive so far.
In your previous roles, have you worked with a partner, or was it mostly internal development?
Yes. In the previous role in my last company in oil and gas, we had an external development partner that supported us.
So looking back, now you're on the other side of the fence.
Yeah.
Were there anything that you, just looking back on the project, was there anything that you think you could have done differently as a customer to help the project along, or what insights do you now have that if you could go into a time machine and talk to yourself, say you need to do these and these and this to make it go better, what were the insights?
The biggest thing that a customer can do for a partner is documenting requirements. I think it's really capturing it doesn't have to be in a system, depending on how system efficient they are and how much they understand the system. Document exactly what it is that you're looking for. I think too often there are requests that require a meeting, a follow-up, further understanding, multiple emails back and forth to try and gauge what the specific request is. I think looking back, reflecting on it, we did an awful lot for our partner in my last role, because we sort of, the way that our ticketing system worked, in order to raise a bug or a change request, we would log that and have to say, well, which org is it related to? Which objects does it relate to? What exactly are you looking for? Have you got any data or examples, or, so I was doing an awful lot for the developer. And when I've seen it on the other side, I step in. There's certain instances where the customer could help more by documenting requirements. I think certainly would be one of the things.
Let me just pick on that point.
Sure.
I believe that a lot of businesses are good at what they do.
Yeah.
You could be a baker like Greg's and you do what you do really well, or you could be a mortgage advisor and you do what you do really well.
Yeah.
And from my point of view, obviously for organizations to make sure that they are on top of their processes, they ought to understand what they do, and they ought to understand what they're trying to get out, what they're trying to optimize.
Yeah.
I feel I can see where you're coming from, why you'd advise yourself, make sure you document the things that you want. But from my point of view, I think that the real question is to try and understand from the customer, what are the things that they want to improve, not what they want. So if I bring in an analogy into it, if you talk to someone and he's got a horse and you say, what's wrong with your horse? Oh, my horse is really slow and he takes up a lot of money, because then I've got to buy him food, and when he's sick I've got to get a vet, and it takes me very long to get from A to B. I really want something better. And if you ask them what they want, actually they might say, I want a bigger and faster horse with a car. But maybe what they need is a car. So by asking the customer what they want, sometimes they're so focused on the issue, they want something better to make that issue go away. But our jobs as consultants sometimes is asking the deeper questions. What is it about the issue that's causing you pain? So not the cut, but what caused the cut? Because the chair you're sitting in has this sharp edge. And we need to fix the chair and not just keep putting bandages on.
No, absolutely.
So that's how I see a consultant can add value to the customers. Not so much. So we've got Salesforce, it's got this functionality, that functionality, it's better than your old functionality, and therefore it should make you happy. But it might be that your old functionality was there to solve a problem, but the Salesforce functionality is just another band-aid. It might be, let's look at that.
I agree. I think there's a range of those questions which are pretty key, to understanding. I think documenting a problem might be suitable in like a bug fix scenario, but it could be more in a user story scenario. As a user, I would like to be able to or
Absolutely.
it could be in a business scenario where, what we're really lacking is we use Salesforce standard reporting only, and we can, we've got a limit of the amount of objects that we can combine. Therefore, our reporting is difficult because we don't get a full picture of reporting. I think that the question is key. So I think, as well as that documentation from the client side, I think it's the communication, it's that honesty with the partner to explain where things are, to recognize some of their limitations, and to have a vision for where they want to go as well. I think that all of them points you raise are valid. So I think it's easy from the client side to build up a list, of backlog of big projects, but again, there's the bigger picture of those, or that evaluation or that assessment of them. Which ones are really going to help you? Which ones are fixes from previous problems?
I love your point about being really honest about where they are and where the limitation is, because with that, it allows your partner to really get on board and say, look, you are aware that these are the places where you're lacking. So one example, I know from a partner point of view, I would always love it if the customer's got good documentation, but they never do. They never do, because they're so focused on doing what they do. The best I can hope for is really good documentation on what they currently do. So great user manuals. You talked about user manuals, and that's the main thing. I would love to work with a customer like you, where you've got user manuals, you've got user guides, you've got videos, where I can now understand how you do things. And that helps us as a partner take you forward, because that's a really good starting point. If you've got a business where they're just doing things, they don't document it, sometimes they don't even know how and why they do something, people come, people go, and then eventually you end up in a situation where everyone's kind of stumbling along trying to.
And I think a lot of people will be in that situation. A lot of businesses, we had the user manual and the videos and the launch, which were great at the time of launch, and then they quickly became outdated, and I think, again, when you look at how the system's governed, or who has ownership, or the different responsibilities, even administrative responsibilities for change requests and documentation, it's difficult, I think, for them to stay on top of. But of course, it would save everyone so much time, because otherwise, when you do a discovery, beyond the client discovery, and you first get your hands on the org, you've got that time where you've got to investigate, processes and flows and workflow updates and all of these links. And like you say, it's a challenge when we don't know why the decision was made at a certain point, and then you get layer upon layer of consultant work in an org, which is tough.
So I was going to say something until, so I was going to say that that's where the value of partner comes in, because they can help understand where you currently are. So a health check, for example, or to review your current org, or what's all these 543 process builders you've got on this one object, why are you doing that? And that's where an organization would take a hold and go, right, look, we've been doing so many band-aids, we don't even know what the original problem we were trying to solve. We need someone else to help us. So that's where I see the value of having consulting partners come in to look at where you are and help you move forward. Then you made a point to say, you mentioned layers and layers of consulting. Can you expand on that and what that meant when you said it?
I've seen in different orgs where it's been clear that they might, over a number of years, they might have had previous engagement with different partners or different consultants. You can see it practically when you're looking behind the scenes of an org. Well, you might know over a 3, 4, 5 year period, it's not unreasonable that they may have engaged with different external support.
Yes.
But it's very difficult as an org gets bigger and bigger, depending on what's been done. It's difficult to know what the last person that was in has done with the system. Presumably there might be a reason that partner might not be there anymore. So at what position was it left? Were they happy? I think there's assessing the health of an org, how much has it grown? How much development has it had? How much is declarative? How much is more complicated? What third-party packages do they have? Are they managed? Are they unmanaged? It's just building up this picture or this context of the environment that you're working in. So there's your system environment as well, very much as your business environment. And then your client position. It's not as simple as just the system side of it, just the business side of it, just the project side of it. And I think that's why project management and delivery is so interesting, because it has to cover all of them, or you have to have an awareness of all of them, I think, to do an effective job.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. I think your previous role as project, you did some project management, even if that wasn't your job title.
Yes.
So you did a lot of those, and the understanding of the big picture is such a key part of doing consulting very well, because you've just very, very accurately identified what the challenges are. As soon as you go into a customer site, this is what you need to know. You need to absorb all this big picture, the context of why the org is this way, and what decisions were made. And you've got 3 different partners who come in at different time, and I can tell because of the way that they've named the different fields at different points. And look, partner number 2 did this, that was a shortcut, and why? What's the reason? And that makes I feel that is why consulting is so interesting. It's because it's like being a detective to me when I was kind of doing this full time. It's trying to figure all this out so that whatever actions we take moving forward is the correct one.
Yes. And it's sometimes, I think as a project manager, you hold that responsibility to go and do that detective research, but also one of the challenges, you've got the responsibility to then translate that to the team that might be working with you to resolve it. You kind of have to collect it and package it and translate it to your team as well, in order that you can deliver something effective.
I think for when I said project management, it's the hat that you wore that allows you big picture thinking. In consulting, we stay. So my most recent roles are as project manager and not as a deep dive implementation or functional consultant. And that's a very big picture thing. So that's not something that I would deep dive into why, but I would get the story and I would get the narrative behind how they got to this point, what the partners did, why they are no longer there, and what, at a high level, what the problems are that they are trying to solve. And that's the piece of information that I will share with my team, so that when they go digging down the technical side, they can put 2 and 2 together in order to have a big picture view. So that's how I run my team. I let the team do all the more clever things, and I do the chatting and the talking and the narrative building. And that's how we do a big picture of the project. In your current role, you mentioned there are some small projects where you are dealing with it by yourself, and there's some bigger ones.
There's a complete range of projects. There's large projects with multiple internal resources on the team. There'll be a project manager, there'll be a lead developer, there'll be some analysts, there'll be, there's the larger projects. So far, I've mainly worked on ones solo so far, where I've had the introduction to the client, I've understood the history and the backstory, what the initial focus is, how much time we've got to do that, and the deliverables. So I've done a lot of the discovery, the scoping, the planning, and all of the hands-on, work myself, to the point where I'm comfortable with, if not, bring somebody else in or raise a hand. So at the minute it's part of why the first 6 months has gone so fast. I've been very actively real hands-on across the full spectrum, from the client side, the project side, the bigger picture, right down into the nuts and bolts as well.
Do you see yourself staying on this path, or do you see yourself moving into a project management role at the later stage?
I think a project management or a project delivery focus at a later stage. I think I'm enjoying immensely the extra learning, the technical learning that I'm getting about the the platform. So I think often I've understood the business needs and I've understood the limitations, and that's as far as it went because I was able to pass those problems over to an external. Whereas now we are that partner. So I've had to do a lot of digging. Well, okay, here's the context. How do we get around it? Because we've got to find a solution. And I think more and more detailed understanding, technical understanding of the platform, I think is very good now, and will see me through 2021 with no issues. You know, there's a lot to learn and engage and absorb, but I think I would use that extra knowledge to help me in project delivery later, because I think then when you've had that practical experience, you've seen the constraints, you know what you're doing. Well, then when you go to do a new client meet in the future, you know, you're more aware of what you can and can't do. You're more aware of your declarative limits versus when you're going to need to do apex, or you're going to be aware of scalability or challenges that you might face. So I think at the minute I'm happy to be deep in the weeds and engaging as much as I can, because a lot of my experiences come on the client side, or the planning, or the bigger picture, or the capturing of projects. So I'm good with my experience. I'm happy with where my experience is at in that level, but now I can get a lot of technical exposure, which I think will help me down the line.
That's good. You mentioned one of the things that you no longer have to do in the consulting side, which is dealing with the more day-to-day meetings and interactions with the stakeholders, because I believe that if you're in an end-user environment, those could take quite a while.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
To get to a decision, it might be 4 or 5 meetings over a span of 2 weeks. In your previous role, where you have had to do that, have you had to deal with situations of maybe high conflict between different stakeholders, or?
I think quite a bit. I think it's quite a tough role to play, particularly when you at that subject matter expert, or when you've got to gather the opinions from a lot of different people. It's really tough. You're always going to face conflict because you get a lot of challenges coming your way. And I think it's quite difficult. And I think one of the biggest challenges about the management and middle management, understanding actually how much work is going into running the system, because from your hands-on people working with the tool or raising bugs and change requests and improvements, there's so much happening at a perceived lower level that just management aren't aware of, you know. So there's you might get a lot of business leaders or managers saying, well, the system doesn't deliver value for us, or it's difficult to input information, or the sales team have complained that they can't get X, Y, and Z. Whereas actually there's a disconnect between how much work's really going on. You know, there's a body of people that are putting blood, sweat, and tears into making the system run. So it's trying to, but I think often you got complaints, challenges, concerns.
What are the skills that you acquired then that you can bring into your current role that you feel will help?
I think listening. I think you have to listen to what somebody's saying, you know, and they're not just coming to give you a hard time for no reason. So trying to understand the root cause of where the problem's coming from. Is it misunderstanding? You know, is it that they don't appreciate what's going on behind the scenes? So I think listening is one. Maybe like listening perhaps leads into sort of sympathy and or empathy. You might be able to appreciate, or you might be able to sympathize with the challenges which they have. And I think you've just got to be calm, and you've just got to talk to people. You've got to have these conversations. You know, you've got to have a level of being candid and honest enough to have an adult conversation where you might not agree at the start of it, but both sides have got something to put across. And, you know, just in the way we're talking now, and I could explain my constraints, and you could explain your pain and challenges as to why my constraints are hurting you, but just talk that out. You know, don't let it build up over a long time and build resentment and hold on to it and then have a big outburst. Try to find a relationship where you can support each other. So, you know, you might see it with a client. You might, at the early stages for kickoff, it might be good and exciting, and you have lots of meetings and documentations. But if you hit that 2-week period where you pass some work over and it's gone quiet, it's a bit of a trigger. It's a warning to say, pick the phone up or just check in that everything's okay. You know, so I think I think proactive communication is part of that as well.
Yes. So that's these are one of the things that I tell my team. Communication is really, really key. I work very much with my peer on the client side, PM, and in your role within a team, you will have your peer on the client side, either the BA or the SME or the key user stakeholder, and it is about listening to them and making sure they feel heard. And oftentimes, as you have found out, that's all they want.
Of course.
And there is no issue after being heard. Just having an ear from the vendor to understand this pain that I feel, and even if you don't have a solution for them, it just makes it miles better.
Or it would reduce a lot of barriers and a lot of walls. And I think get to know them, get to know that expert, and look at how you can help them achieve what they're trying to achieve. You know, you might see that they've got a lot of enthusiasm. They might know their area really well. They might have limited technical knowledge, but you can see they'd be an excellent tester or someone that's key to the testing process. Help them, you know, help inform them how they could play a role in that, and that'd be really good, and they'd be central to the project. You know, like if you the ability to pass something on that's useful for them, do it, because it will pay it forward when that, you know, if you can get I have a situation where we've done some pretty complicated automation, and I need to know that the client understands it as well as I do. So we've had a variety of sessions to really go through. So if they have to troubleshoot it when I'm not there anymore, I know that they can fix it. And yes, that's taken a bit of extra time, but it's been enjoyable. You know, 30 to 45-minute meeting where someone's enthusiastic and wants to learn. No problem. I'll find a time. I'll fit 2 of them in, because it will work for them. And then all of a sudden, if we come back later and you do an extra phase, we remember each other, we pick up again, and they might teach somebody else it, you know. And I think that's what we've got to do, I think.
That is a really, really good work ethic, I think, prioritizing human connection, because we never know when we're going to meet them again.
Yeah, absolutely.
On a project. Yeah, so that's really good. Have you had any opportunity to work with offshore or remote team or people who are not in the UK?
Yes. Yeah. In the company that I worked with last time, I was based in the Northeast at the time. Our development partner's headquarters was in Paris. And then we had offshore support coming from Mauritius as well at the same time. Fortunately, at the time, pre-COVID and with business travel, I was in Paris regularly, sort of once a month. And so I had met both the Paris partners, but also on a number of occasions, the offshore development support coming from Mauritius. So it's still I would say it's a challenge at a distance, but then look at the last year with COVID, we've all been at a distance. So I think you can't say, well, you can say it, but I don't think it's a thing as much as it used to be.
But that was really good, because I want to pick up on that. In your previous role, you had offshore people that you were working with, but you went and met them face to face. So you're able to make that personal human face-to-face connection.
Yes.
Which then makes the screen connection easier.
Yes. Yeah, it does.
Since you started Cloud Galacticos, have you met anyone face to face or even for socially distanced walk?
No. You know, changing jobs in the pandemic, I didn't have a face-to-face interview. You know, I had a range of Skype interviews and phone conversations. I've met all the team virtually. You know, we have a daily stand-up where we're all on, you know, on Slack or Zoom. But I've literally seen the tiles of the team. So the 12, 15 people, I haven't met any of them.
How do you think moving forward, because you've worked in a situation where, in my opinion, the best way to work with offshore people, but now everybody's kind of offshore as in remote anyway, where you have some face-to-face time and then pair it with remote. Moving forward, I'm not sure how your company works, but does it look like they're more open to 100% work from home, or is it going
Yes, I think it's a remote organization So I think there's people spread sort of all across the UK. I think they've got office spaces in Manchester and in London, sort of remote spaces, and I think they're quite keen to get people to meet up. But predominantly, everybody's sort of in their remote position. Yeah, at first I thought, okay, this is strange. I'm changing jobs. It's a difficult time to move jobs. How will I adapt? But it hasn't been an issue. We have a lot of computer screen time, face-to-face contact.
Okay. All right. I would like, just before we close up, I'd like to do a little rapid fire question.
Okay.
They're called the U user manual. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's where, if possible, you have a little manual that tells people how to work with you, and if you hand them it, and it makes things a lot easier. And this came across my radar not too long ago, and I thought, hey, that's really good. I should do one myself. But I'd like to ask you some questions out of this manual, and see how you get on. Okay. What are some raw, unfiltered truths about yourself that you're willing to share?
Oh, wow. Raw, unfiltered truth. Okay, so I shouldn't try and filter them. That's what I'm trying to do now. I think I'm a bit of a perfectionist at heart. I think that's good and it's bad. You know, I think it has its limitations as well. But I think by nature, I always strive to achieve a bit more, or go a little bit further, or gain it, you know, constantly pushing and driving. And that's not as a positive, you know, that's not a default sort of, I see it as a good thing. I think it's a good thing, and it has its limitations at times as well.
Okay, so what are the flaws that you have that you think would put people off or annoy people?
Oh, okay, it would annoy people or put people off. Perhaps linked to habits, and you know, that perfectionism and that drive to sort of keep moving on. It's maybe the pace, my pace of work might annoy people. You know, I think if I've often got downtime, I look for, right, what's the next thing? Let's push on with this, or create a list about this, or chase this up, or, you know, I can be at times quite action focused. So I think maybe the pace of that could frustrate some people. I'm mindful of it, you know. I think I'm not on all of the time. And you have different changes, but maybe that could be one thing.
Okay. What's your communication style like? How should people communicate with you?
Frequently and openly. And that would be the same for my style versus coming back the other way. I think that's how I would advise people to talk to me. Frequently, openly, honestly as well. You know, I think in communication wise, I'm across most platforms. So if it's Messenger or email or, you know, call and different things, I think I'm approachable in different ways. But the key is raise things, have a level of candidness and honesty where we can just talk things out. Things are so much easier to manage if you raise an issue at the time it occurs, or raise a concern, or ask for help, or need some support. Both ways around, that works for people with me, and I think that's I've got to do the same thing with other people.
Okay, that's a very project management answer, by the way. It's nearest mine as well. What are your quirks?
Quirks. I'm quite like as much as I like detail and documentation and bullets and plans and charts and that, I'm quite a visual thinker at the same time. Do you know what I mean? I quite like art, and I quite like design, and I quite like visual communication and color. And, you know, the alternative to that, some of the things I'm interested in don't exhibit the behaviors that I show. But yeah, I've got an interest. It's not all numbers and systems and data, and, you know, I quite like. Yeah.
Okay. How do you make decisions?
Good question. Context first. So as much context details as you can collect. So scope, situation, timing, risk, impact, as much information as you can possibly gather, as much detective work that you can gather, and then link it together, assimilate what's all them things. Okay, so here's all of our situations. Know what decision it is you're looking to take. Know if you have any alternatives, and then just weighing up the good, the bad, and then making an evaluation, taking all of that to say, okay, got these potential routes, these risks, these potential benefits. Either it could be the least worst solution you take, I think it's...
You're very methodical. You're not the kind to make gut decisions then.
I think I would probably be led by the heart, but I think you can't be. If it was my own personal decision, I would be led by a gut feel or my heart. If it was me, it's different in a client context or a project context, because it's not your area you're working on behalf of. So I think you've got to, I'm more methodical in a business sense, definitely, whereas I might be, think with my heart rather than my head personally.
Okay. Last one. What are some of the things that people misunderstand about you?
That's a good one. Self-awareness, isn't it? What might people misunderstand?
Are there any times where you've had to correct somebody in the way that they perceive you?
No, I don't think quite as formally as that. I think I want work and I want projects to be about enjoyment and engagement and success. So I would always like to do a good job and to give good achievement, but I want the people working with me to enjoy it along the way. So I think I would like us to be challenged and stretched, but I want us to challenge and stretch each other and find engagement and be successful. So it's not all about the success and the delivery and the must get here. I think it's about pushing the boundaries a little bit where you can to keep moving on, and perhaps at times that can be misunderstood, or it might be misunderstood. I'm putting it back out there. It might be misunderstood as too much of a drive for delivery or success, or must go on, or must do more, or must,
Not a bad thing.
No, it's not a bad thing, and it's just being mindful of it. It's everybody's different, aren't they? And they like to work in different ways. So I think it's not what I'm aware of now, which is slightly different to when I was younger. It's not one size fits all, and every it's all slightly different. So whereas before I think I would have just pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed, 10 years ago, I'm more mindful now that it's about it's a shared enjoyment. It's not if I'm individually superly successful, but I alienate the rest of my team because I'm just relentlessly pushing on. It's no good. It's a shared one. So then I might have to turn some of those things off or adapt or let somebody else. You know what I mean? I think that kind of thing.
Okay. Thank you very much, Luke, for taking time out to speak to me on the podcast today.
No problem at all. I thank you for having me. I've enjoyed following your content, and I think this is really good what you're doing with the podcast. So I hope it goes really well for you and you have a lot more interesting conversations like this.
Thank you. I was just going to say that you provided a huge amount of insight on your journey from end user to consulting, and the insights that you've learned that you could have helped yourself in the past, and hopefully through this podcast it can help whoever's listening when they're looking at career choices. For example, there will be cases where being an end user might be the best choice for them, and in some cases where consulting is where they want to head to. So thank you so much for your input, because I think that provides a lot of value and insight to other people. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
No problem.
Thank you. Bye.